Jim Joyce.
Happy Wednesday, man. Happy Wednesday.
Happy Wednesday. And it's refreshing to actually be like on Zoom and seeing people versus I don't know, just like being on Clubhouse. Have you jumped on this thing?
Right. I listen to like you've got me into it now, but talk to me about Clubhouse.
So I will admit, and I'm sure my family will listen to this. I've been sneaking in between calls. In the morning, I jump on a treadmill all of a sudden so I can be on the Clubhouse. I walk the dog. I join in these like random thoughts and random rooms, but not random. They're like interesting, right? Like there's a podcasting. You and I should join these podcasting rooms, by the way, because we're like pros. I was listening to some of this. And it's a great way to discover people. So I'm not convinced that they're gonna survive as its own company for a long time. I think Salesforce or /Slack.
I listened to like I was kind of like, what is this about? I didn't quite get it, and then next thing I know, I was listening to like an hour of like slam poetry on Sunday night.
See.
I was like, people were bearing their souls to me, and I was listening, jamming. It was awesome.
Awesome. There was I joined for like 5 minutes. Somebody was joking, like it's like you can test your jokes in that room, so you should join that one as well, since you're.
I like it.
But anyway, so I know this is going to be for our listeners / viewers is going to be a little different. So I know Marty from HealthXL put out some predictions, and then he said, hey, I would love some feedback from Francesca, he tagged, and Robert Garber, and guess what? We are going to gather them. So I'm letting them all in. It's going to be a mess. This is the first time we're doing this.
This is an important episode, I'd say. This is a critical episode.
First, I do. Marty looks so professional. Wow. In some corner, and Francesca and
I look
Robert.
like a hologram.
Exactly.
Martin, so before we dive in. No. Before we dive in, because we were chatting already for a few minutes before we let you guys in, and we were talking about at least my addiction to Clubhouse. How many of you guys know about it or been on it? I mean, if we don't talk about it.
No idea.
All right, we'll give you a lesson.
I know, Eugene, you've been trying to get me into it. So after you texted me earlier this week, I've been trying to check it out. I don't have enough hours in the day.
I know. But I was joking around.
The problem is it's scheduled. Like I see things scheduled and I'm like, well, that's not gonna work.
But it's Eugene's way of having multiple conversations because he only has so many hours in the day, right? So rather than having a one-to-one with me, he does it, and then he does it in such a way as other people, he gets the social media lift off it, so it's genius.
Right.
Does this make Eugene feel productive?
Yeah,
it does. I end up optimizing my time, and again, I am sure the family will listen to this episode even though they stopped. I went this weekend because I was almost ashamed how much time I'm spending on it. I said, hey guys, I'm going on the terrace and I'm gonna do treadmill and run. They kind of looked at me weird, but I really took that opportunity of 74 minutes being on the treadmill and being on Clubhouse. So just FYI.
Yeah, he's been telling his family that he's going to take a smoke break to go on Clubhouse. That's
exactly. Even though I don't.
We have some housekeeping because we're recording here. So we've got some housekeeping. So Happy New Year, Francesca, Rob, Martin. This is our prediction.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Welcome.
Competing with Lady Gaga and Joe Biden, and like you guys are really confident on your audience stuff given the alternatives, right?
I'm going to spare you my singing.
So this is the inauguration episode. This is the inauguration episode.
I've got my Johnny Walker black.
Nice.
Nice.
All right.
You really needed this after the last 4 years.
I just I just found it under my CFO's desk.
Time to double check the numbers.
I don't know if that's good news or bad news.
Robert, are you on dry January? Is that are you really doing that?
That what?
I am.
Oh, really?
I'm not sure whose stupid idea that was, but I am.
What are you doing?
That's unfortunate for you.
Dry January.
Oh, all right, all right. Well, it's also what, 1 by you? 1 p.m., 2 p.m.? I can't even do the
Yeah,
math.
it's 1.
1.
It's 1.
Yeah.
Yeah, this isn't the time. This isn't the tempting hour of the day. I'm doing dry January and low carb month, so it's a
Oh, what?
whole.
Are you a masochist? Why would you do
it's a
that?
whole slew of deprivation.
You weren't angry enough?
2020 didn't kick your butt enough?
Yeah, I'll just say I overindulged in Q3 and Q4, and this was necessary.
Yeah, this is an intervention. You can admit that.
Self-imposed.
Well, at least let's pretend whoever has a drink. So to happy inauguration and
lots of Clubhouse.
Yeah, lots of yeah. Well, I'm gonna try to wean off that addiction for after a while. But to set the stage, why we're all here, and we started talking about this. So Marty nicely tagged all of us to have a discussion of what HealthXL put together as predictions. So I'm gonna
drink.
It was. But we can do both.
Keep going.
Yeah.
So, I also don't want us to go for an hour and our listeners and viewers get bored. So my suggestion would be, Marty, and I'm going to put you in the spot a little bit, maybe take us through the few that you put together, and then we can all kind of vote on one that we can kind of banter on a bit more in more detail. And the challenge is, I don't know how much arguments we're all going to have. We needed like a Matthew Holt or a Vishal, or because,
tankers.
Folks. Yeah, okay. Well, I can try and be the contrarian if that's what you want.
Well, I'll try to be one. I don't know.
Okay, you can try. Okay. All right. So this was a piece of work that we just did with our partners Evolution Road. And usual, what does 2021 look like? And we just tried to make it digestible. So we tried to boil it down to no more than 5. So we got everyone to agree with 5. And then what I think might be interesting about it is I suggest we'll probably agree with most of the stuff, but it'll probably be around the timing, I think, will be the interesting part, Okay. Do we actually think this stuff is going to happen, land this year? Or maybe we don't, maybe we won't agree, I don't know. But anyway, let me jump into it. So the first one is health at home is the future. I don't know if you want to do a poll or a vote on these, right? That's the first one.
I'm writing them down, and then we'll, I don't know, we'll jump.
Keep rolling.
Okay. Second one is end-to-end care models bridging physical and virtual will become the norm. Mm-hmm. Third one is decentralized trials will leverage digital biomarkers. People might disagree with that. This one I think is interesting. Pharmacies will position themselves as the community hubs bridging digital and physical. Mm-hmm. And then last but not least, this is one after your heart, Eugene, disruptive prescription digital therapeutic distribution models will surface.
Okay. Can I chime in on one? And sorry, Francesca, and unless others feel differently. To me personally, the decentralized trials and biomarkers, it's a given. There's no other choice anymore for pharma. I don't know. And so unless there's like a real contrarian view on it for us to debate on,
I'll be the contrarian on this one.
Okay, go for it.
Oh, so do your quick contrarianism on it, because I
think if not now, never, but it may be never, because the technology's been out there for so long. Mm-hmm. The number of companies in this space, has expanded, probably doubled year over year. and I'm not seeing really remarkable changes with how our clinical trials are being managed. I'm seeing a couple of cool examples of decentralized trials, of opportunities where pharma's really utilizing technology that's existed for years. But even when there are huge delays in a time of a pandemic, I'm still seeing a lot of reticence to change.
And I'm curious why. Like, is it culture? Is it that people just
Completely
not
culture.
familiarized? Okay.
It's culture and risk aversion, because no one wants to risk their phase 3 blockbusters study on something that may not work, or on something where the quality of the data may not be what they expect, even though it's been proven that it can be.
Right.
So I think it's fear.
And the business model, I'm going to go with Francesca's contrarian view here on this one, is the business model is not changed at all, right? Like the underlying, the business model of supporting clinical research, how the economics work, will be the same in the year, so they might add these things as augmentations and efficiencies and a way to sell an innovation, but it might happen over time. But the business model and the need to change the business model isn't there, right? Like that.
Yeah.
They don't really need to change the business.
Are you talking about the pharma business model, or we had Michelle from Medable, right? I mean, she fits right into this whole thing. I mean, they're blowing up in a positive way, right?
Right.
So,
right.
It's a really good example of it working.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good example of it working.
So just being cognitive, because I know we don't want to spend too much time on diving on each one. I'm going to make a suggestion. Because if I look at Disrupting DTX, I'm going to send all the listeners and viewers to my DTX podcast, unless you really want to. Okay, Marty, go ahead. Fine.
I think Francesca raises a really interesting point. Like, I really want to dig in. I'd love to dig into that a little bit, because it's so frustrating. No, I can't.
No, I'm kidding. Go ahead. Go ahead. It is you gotta.
You know what's going to happen. That's going to eat into our happy hour anyway. So that's I'm trying to put some time limits to 35 minutes for the episode. And I think with everybody here, I'm just honestly curious. So first of all, absolutely. This is a great argument. It's been there. My suggestion was going to be Disrupting DTX, and listen to the podcast. I'm already 14 episodes as far as recording from, some of the early trailblazers, the new trailblazers, etc. But this is not a pitch for that. And I'm actually curious how you guys see the end-to-end care model, because to me, actually, pharmacies are also part of that. And as a matter of fact, CVS Minute Clinics, or is it we had Scott last week, right, Jim, with primary health, primary care. So to me, actually, disease management, end-to-end care, non-hospital care, primary health, clinics, this is all kind of merging, right, from a user and end customer patient experience.
Right.
To me, that's the fascinating discussion, but I don't know how you guys I don't care. I'm just hanging.
Great. So the what's the prediction there? It's going to happen, Martin? Is that the prediction?
Yeah, that's the prediction.
The prediction is okay. Rob, unpack that for us, would you?
Sorry. Okay, so the deals that you see, Rob can probably talk about this better than me, but the Livongo story that's painted in terms of taking this proven model for diabetes and putting it, across the whole spectrum, and I think they did a really nice story of how can you combine the different elements, and COVID kind of kick-started that. But I think there is an acceptance, certainly at an investor level, to look at these new models and say, well, we understand how to manage this disease, and it doesn't involve lots of expensive real estate and expensive clinicians, that we understand how to codify that and we know how to put the whole thing together. And so, I mean, Rob and Francesca can talk a lot better about this than me, but that's the nirvana, right? And it would seem like, there's lots of things in healthcare that make sense that don't happen just because the incentives aren't aligned. So I think that's probably the interesting part of it, is like, do we think that the incentives are now starting to get aligned, that the patient and the physician and the payer are all in the same spectrum, or do we think that that's still like a nice thing, but it's not going to happen?
Rob, give us the wisdom here. Bring in some.
Yeah.
Let's talk about clinical trials.
Yeah, I hear there are these things called these CROs and these virtual trial things that might be important, but I don't know. Actually, I think there are probably two axes to think about this. One is actually generational. Like when we think about how people consume and access healthcare, and we get out of, out of the current environment, people who are on in years, who are used to seeing their physicians in person and have a personal relationship there, and are complex and may have multiple clinicians. So they have a PCP, they have a GI person, they have a cardiologist. Like, I'm pretty confident those people will relatively quickly revert back to that care modality because it's comfortable for them and it's built on a personal relationship. I think as generations turn and you get younger, the more and more you have the ability to connect the dots between off and online and create continuity of care. So I think that's one of the axes. I think the other one we think about is clinical versus non-clinical. So what's interesting is Martin brought up Livongo. I don't love to harp on that, but one of our key tenets there was, how do we keep people out of the doc's office, out of the system? Like once the system gets a hold of you, all bets are off, right? Like, you're into lab tests and diagnostics and imaging and lots of doctor visits, and it's expensive and confusing, and the care journey is disjointed and not integrated. Versus there, we thought, like, if you actually get in front of these chronic conditions and provide people with the tools, information, and better self-management, we could prevent that. And so I think, there are sort of, let's say, less clinical interventions that have been successful across the board, whether it's around obesity or behavioral health or chronic GI disorders, diabetes, et cetera, where people can use these to keep themselves out of acute care and within the four walls. I think once you're in the four walls, it's a different model, and it's to TBD to see how consumers react to sort of the online and offline integrated model. And then I think the last piece of it is, how have you been trained as a clinician, right? I think everything we figured out a year ago is that clinicians had never really practiced in this virtual world, nor had been trained to, except for people who are like already clinicians in like a Teladoc of the world or an MD Live or an Amwell. But we basically forced all the providers overnight to become virtual care providers and without any training. So I think some of them have gotten used to it and are comfortable that it creates better care continuity, but the workflows change and the personnel in the office.
And they're moonlighting between the Teladoc and the Amwell and et cetera, right? I mean, I know
they are.
There's
but
no fixed platform.
Right, but if they're seeing in the US a patient for 6 or 7 minutes at a time, and actually, what was the call, Martin, we did with on the dermatology side, where one of the derms, the woman who was in the Czech Republic, said like some of the derms see like, it was a crazy number.
It was like
30,
60
40,
patients a day.
60 patients a day or something. It was a crazy number. So if that's what you're seeing, like, who's the other person who's dealing with like the email requests or the texts or whatever electronic continuity there is? Like, there's no time in the day. So I think there's some workflow issues.
So talk to me, I mean, again, I'm going to refer, like we had Scott, but One Medical and others. So that's one aspect, right? And their whole thing is also to employers, primary health, not care. That's sort of the renaming of this. Then you got the platform or the pipes, as in Teladoc and Amwell, that are buying, I'll say, content-driven companies, right? Like a Livongo. Where's that handoff? Is is something like a One Medical truly becoming the front door and then passing it on to still care management / reversal. And then, God forbid, then you're inside the system and that has its own bulk. Is it all merging together? That to me, that's why I kind of grabbed on the end-to-end care and even the pharmacies, which are a big component of all of this throughout, are sort of part of that journey. Look at minute clinics, right?
Yeah, it sounds
Right
like
inside of CVS.
From listening to
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and yes, and yes.
Yes.
But I would say it depends, because it depends on the patient's condition, because there are some conditions, like the ones you mentioned, Robert, that can be modulated via behavioral health, where I think this can have a huge impact and keep patients out of the system. But if it's not, and those tend to be ones that are more multifactorial, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and the big ones, and the ones that are responsible for the lion's share of the healthcare system costs. But what about the others? Like, I think there are some conditions that are more amenable to these sort of interventions, where you can see a patient really being treated end to end. And it's more, chronic disease maintenance. But how do you deal with the patients coming in the first time? Are they just triaged by these different approaches, and then they have to get into the system eventually? Or, so I think there's almost another axis. It's what is the patient presenting with?
Doesn't it feel like the system's only, with all these, with these successful new companies coming into it and carving off another piece and offering something more innovative or more effective, or showing that just fragments the system even more and more and more?
Yeah.
So you can't set end to end versus, single payer systems like what we have here, or, in Europe.
And will it ultimately be governed by the payer system? So if you and I have a different private insurance, will we be going a different path?
Right. So it's not happening, Martin. That prediction's not happening.
I want to come back on that one.
Which one? We were all over the place. Thanks to me.
The end to end, no chance. End to end. It's going to be end to middle to back to end, back to middle.
I think the other piece that matters is data. Right. And so one of the things we've learned in a number of businesses is the value of real-time longitudinal data and how that directs some of this activity, right? So to your point, Francesca, we definitely saw people who had their diabetes under control and they didn't need to go see their endo every 3 months, right? But they were still going because before they had real-time data, that was the standard of care. But the problem was they were taking valuable appointment times that those people who were in worse shape and not controlling their condition should have been getting access to. But in the absence of it's the same thing I think about the holy grail of continuous BP monitoring. Like the idea that you go to your PCP, your cardiologist or something, and they take your BP at a particular moment in time, and that dictates what high blood pressure medicine you get put on for hypertension. Like, what if you had longitudinal BP, real-time data that would fundamentally change what we thought about how we treat heart disease and hypertension. But we're early there. But I think that will also dictate sort of who goes the less acute route and who goes the more acute route. And the more data, the better.
Like the sharing of the data, I think, I saw, someone was telling me, there's an Irish company that was advertising in the US around their COVID testing, Let's Get Checked. And Let's Get Checked started off doing sexual health testing, right?
Yep.
And so their whole premise was hey, you might not want to go, you might not want to sit in a hospital waiting for your, in the Irish market for waiting for your exams to come back, But they went in, so it was about confidentiality. Yeah. So I thought this is a good one to bring up. But the you might not so now they're doing COVID tests. Do I want if I'm say you have COVID, do I want to share that with my whole system? Or do I, as the holder of the data, want to hold that data back, from it? So the patient might.
That's how a lot of telemedicine started as well. It was sexual health because, people would take a picture and send it off because it was a lot easier than going to, your PCP that you've known since you were in college. So,
Don't get any ideas, Martin. No pictures.
Can we go back to the question? Can we go back to the question though?
What was the question again?
It's not happening. Next
Jim
prediction.
Jim is talking about sexual health for some reason that I don't know.
No, we just realized your prediction it's not happening.
No, we're just going to dive into it, Jim. It's like we gotta. This is complicated stuff. It's not, So Rob mentioned about the different types of, whether it's older generation or younger generation, whatever. And then Francesca mentioned about the different types of conditions or whatever. There was a thing today. K Health raised 130 million or something. Yeah. And so I remember when we were in Australia, like last year, wherever it was, at one of the pediatric hospitals, they said like these kids literally are digital natives, And so when we talk about this end to end, I'm really curious what you guys think in terms of whether we'll see the adoption happening with the digital natives, whether like pediatrics, which has been an area that's been kind of, always been the kind of area that hasn't got a lot of money and blah, 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 whether we think that's gonna, or whether we think there's other parts of the population or different diseases that are gonna really, really kick on and sort of adopt these models.
It's interesting. I was talking to Lisa just the other day about investment in pediatrics and how little of it there is, because it's hard to scale. I think because people, it's not really causing pain in the system yet. I mean, it tugs at your heartstrings, of course, right. And as parents, we can all relate to that, but it's not really a pain point for the health system. So
I also think we're outside, and I'm sorry, I'm going to speak for myself, but we're outside of that age group that we can make a prediction for digital natives.
I mean, speak for yourself. Seriously.
That's why I did say I'm speaking for myself.
This is fake. I brush it on every morning.
So I'm always the timekeeper. I'm trying to like box us into that 30-35 minutes. There's one left, I think. Maybe we can just touch on health at home. I mean, it all kind of melts together, right? Obviously, through the journey. Health at home. Health at home.
So the prediction is what? Is that health at home? What happens, Martin, this year? What's your prediction?
Yeah. So I think we've touched on a little bit of it already about diagnostics at home, and so we talked a little bit about let's get checked, right? So, what if you could? Why wouldn't you do the diagnostic at home?
But so this year it's kind of a bold prediction because we all can't leave our houses right now.
Yeah. Exactly.
So if you're looking for a layup,
this might be it.
No, but so is
the first part. That's the first part. The second part is on the acute side, and we predict that patient care is going to shift from the traditional hospital setting from the ward to the safest and most convenient place. So again, that's a very broad statement, and it's designed to get reaction. So I think what's interesting is, within all of the different conditions and all the different age groups and different geographies, I'd be really curious if people think that's going to happen. Like we think it is, but we're putting it out there really just to stimulate debate rather than, anything else.
In Spain, at least, it has happened. So they send doctors to your house rather than you going to the clinic, which surprised, as an American, surprised the bejesus out of me when I called our local clinic, and they said, all right, well, someone will be there in 2 hours. And I'm like, for what? And then, they came and with all their gear and they were gone in 10 minutes. It was incredible. But so it is happening.
And I know Sanitas here is heavily pushing their Blau, right? The telemedicine platform as a first point of contact. So at home, sitting at home, and I know again it's telemedicine part of it, but
But
this was the public system even, which was
two
surprising.
different approaches. Well, first of all, yes, the short answer is that in the U.S. it's definitely happening heavily on the home health side for seniors, and that's not new. I would say it is interesting. We're seeing both house calls for things like primary care and vaccinations and sick visits, or even physical therapy. And actually, I just talked to a company a couple of weeks ago that's building out a platform for home infusion around oncology, which is highly lucrative in this country.
Yeah.
And I know that DaVita is working on home dialysis. And so there are a lot of things like that, really clinical, moving to the home. What I think, though, will be interesting is some of them, particularly around things that could be done via telemedicine. It's driving convenience, but it doesn't seem to be driving, it's not changing the cost model.
No,
right. And so,
guess,
so like, you know, that's the next part, right? We want things that are convenient, but it's like, as I say, it's evolution, not revolution. You know, it's like, okay, it's better for me as a patient, but I still have a doc calling me unless you can send in a nurse practitioner and there are 20 other people within a 3-block radius of me. Otherwise, you reduce the density and the number of people that clinician can see every day.
But I wonder actually, and I'm going to be the contrarian in this one, like home dialysis, right? Because how many missed appointments, as an example, or a patient couldn't get to the center, right? So I actually think there might be something there around driving the cost out, not just the convenience of it.
True.
But yeah, I mean, I ran
with infusion stuff too. There's missed appointments, and there's also you're putting lots of people in a room with compromised immune systems.
Yeah.
Right. I ran a home care company for years, as you know, that was point of care we ran, and your most expensive asset, your primary cost is your most expensive asset is in a car, trying to get to the location in order to perform one procedure. You know, so in certain circumstances that makes tons of sense. And tons of it, it's just literally convenience or managing it. So it's one of those things, it's kind of a luxury. You know, it seems to me it can be a luxury, and if it's a necessity, you know, if you're doing it, but if you can get the people to travel, if you can get people to travel to a central location and deliver the care and not get them sick in the process.
Or drive through care, you get your Starbucks and then your annual on the way.
Right, exactly.
Hey, it started with I forgot that we're not supposed to say, we said COVID like 13 times.
Did you say it?
It was on you. I remember you holding up the
it was all on me. It was all on me.
Is this like Life of Brian when the guy says Jehovah? Is that
a great reference?
So home care. So I think mixed feeling, end to end isn't happening next year. Mixed feeling about the home stuff. Like,
is this?
I think it'll happen. The question is, will it persist?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. But it's.
I mean, remember how much infrastructure has already been built and invested in, right? You know, and is being underutilized right now at the ambulatory and PCP level.
In pharmacy, you made a prediction on pharmacy that what's going to happen? It's going to disintermediate us.
Are you just going to argue with it, Jim? Is that what's going to happen here?
I'm trying to make this the shortest episode with the most people.
Martin, we're delighted to have you. Just smile with the predictions. We're delighted to have you. You're very welcome to my house. You're very welcome. If you want to argue with me, you can argue with me.
Listen, it's the combination. I mean, look, Aspen RX, right, raised another 25 mil, right? Like it's sort of remote on-demand pharmacists helping people through their adherence and drug utilization. The clinics will still stay their CVSs of the world. So I think that part will position themselves as a hub, I think in a combination of, right? So. Guys, 35 minutes. This, if we can end this now, this I think will be the shortest episode with the most people. We can do it.
Bravo.
Wrap it up. Any?
I think that's it. I think that's it. We've got some great predictions. We got some
we got some contrarians in here. You know, just forcing our way through. So. On that note, to the viewers and the listeners, hit that subscribe button. This is the year, Jim. This is the year we're going Joe Rogan style.
Yeah. What's your final comments there? So Inauguration Day. Congrats, everyone.
That's it.
Looking up.
Looking up. I love it.
Long last.
All right.
Cheerios.
Peace.
Cheerio.